This is Laurence Galian, podcast number 21, The Place Inside. We're at war right now. It's civil war. The war is between the machine culture that seeks immortality through becoming robots. This side is fighting against the Mother Earth culture that is seeking immortality through discovering the Philosopher's Stone, or we might say through working with alchemy. The great Terence McKenna, may he rest in peace, told us that we need a forward escape. In other words, we can't solve the problems at the level they're created at. He told us that a singularity will be discovered, an undiscovered country that we will find before December 21st, 2012. He actually said that the Philosopher's Stone would be discovered before December 21st, 2012. William Henry says that we have a, quote, ticking clock or ticking time bomb. He says this because people like Ray Kurzweil is out there talking about artificial intelligence, things like a computer patch that is something like a tattoo and will transform gaming and computer interfaces. Michio Kaku is saying that the race to perfection is the race to become robots. Well, we're right on the cusp now of two different kinds of immortality. I would say we're at war, because the machine reality is really the Archon reality, and that is versus the alchemical revolution, or the unnatural methods which threaten all life on Earth, versus the natural methods which enhance, bless, and strengthen all life on Earth. The alchemical methods will start the crumbling of the machine culture, the defeat of the archons. It's a split culture, and it is described as a culture divided against itself. We are split down the middle in a variety of ways. Emotionally, we keep repressed certain aspects of ourselves. For example, men repress what they regard as feminine attributes, and women repress what they regard as masculine traits. The battle of the sexes is a reality in this culture. Men have been acculturated to think that women represent nature, and as nature can at times be wild, uncontrollable, and furious, we as men feel a need to suppress, repress, control women. Women react by passive-aggressive actions in order to express their anger, which further keeps the wheels of alienation spinning. We are also split between our minds and bodies. We believe that there is something inherently superior to the mind as compared to the body. Judeo-Christian culture would have us believe that the body is only the temple of the spirit, or even worse, a kind of horse or animal of burden that we have to ride throughout life on earth. Anything that is close to nature is considered strange and held to be dangerous. Religious teachers have taught us to think of our bodies as dirty and prone to sin. They have also told us that women are the agents of the devil, ever since Eve first tempted Adam in the Garden of Eden. Even thoughts and feelings that we may have from time to time, we repress and tell ourselves that we mustn't think or feel that way. Men and women express their fear of nature through what I call an order fetish. We are obsessed with grooming our lawns and landscaping away our wild weeds. We are out there fighting the unchecked growth of trees and shrubs. Yeah, we really think that we're some kind of warriors out there fighting the weeds in our front lawn. Unfortunately, the closest most men get to nature and being true wild men is their nightly or their weekly fight against the grass with their lawn lawnmowers, which is exactly what are called the eco-feminists don't want, because it is perpetuating the rift between humans and the earth. The wounds that need to be healed are many. For instance, we can start with the problems that language engenders. We are extremely paranoid to call ourselves animals, yet we truly are animals. We categorize everything, and in that categorizing, we have divided up the original unity of consciousness. We talk of race, and thereby set apart people into groupings by birth. We use the words masculine and feminine, which causes sexuality to become a separating barrier between human beings. We also divide ourselves up into heterosexual, homosexual, gay, and lesbian. As men, we have become so confused, ambivalent, uncentered, and unconfident about our own male feelings that we use homosexuals as a scapegoat to both release our anxiety and hide our confusion. If the way we define our masculinity is our hatred of gay men, then our masculinity is as solid as lime jello. This is all caused by the dominance of left brain rationalist thinking over right brain intuitive thinking. We need to heal the atmosphere, our bodies, and our genetic DNA coding, the interlinking helix that may already be irreparably damaged by our chemical and radiation pollution of the earth. At the center of the problem, I believe, is the notion of hierarchy. We as a patriarchal society need to fit everything into a paradigm of hierarchical thinking. So we have neatly fit ourselves and the universe into nice little pigeonholes, starting with God and the angels, then white man, white women. Mothers are forced to be economically dependent, as well as the elderly. Humans of other races, then we have dogs and cats, animals, trees with insects, and finally the ground we walk upon. Being at the bottom rung of the ladder of a hierarchy. In a hierarchy, power flows from the top down. In an egalitarian group, it remains broadly based. Decisions are made by the people most affected by them, and or those who will carry them out. We need to re-examine our modern day values. In other words, we need to deconstruct this modern era's values. Do we really want to become robots? Western society originally saw development as the solution to all the world's ills. Yet there was an alchemist who had discovered this elixir stone, who went into a hospital one night and put the white powder on the tongue of everyone in that hospital, and that night every single person in the hospital walked out healthy. And afterwards that gentleman went to a pub for a beer, where, guess what happened to him? He was murdered. That's why we're approaching this as a group. We're doing this not as a single person as we used to do, as we used to practice alchemy individually, hiding these facts from other people. And what would happen is that if other people discovered that we knew the secret, we would be killed. Or else, if other people discovered the secret, guess who would come in? Those who always enter the picture when something very interesting or very cool is discovered. I am talking about the rich. What happens in a place, in a city, where something really cool is going on? A new musical movement, a new artistic movement. Well, all the rich people start moving in and forcing all the musicians and the artists out, and then the musicians and the artists have to find another place to live. Well, the same thing happens with alchemy. The rich start moving moving in, but they keep their provisos. They always want to keep you chained somehow. So the Western society, like I said, originally saw the solution to all the world's ills through a kind of development. It fostered the arrogant assumption that Western solutions to problems were the solutions to everybody's problems. Actually, what occurred was that in the process of development, the natural economy of the indigenous peoples was destroyed to make way for the quote-unquote improvement. It is also thinly disguised the expansionist policies of the various Western governments. In colonialist thinking, the colonialized populations existed only to generate needed material input for the industrial centers of Europe. In other words, exporting rubber from the Amazon, for example. The world was Eurocentric. And we have talked here before about how history has been Eurocentric. The very history of the human being has been Eurocentric. Machine culture was and is still pitched against natural symbiosis. Well, we know this development resulted generally in the destruction of most of the natural resources. I was amazed to discover a couple of years ago, I used to think that over in Africa there were still these giant plains that existed where thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of the wild animals that we all see in zoos just roam the beautiful African plains. Well, that, my friends, is a complete fallacy. Most of the animals that we know of in the zoo no longer exist in Africa. There are no giant plains filled with thousands and thousands of wild and free animals. They mostly do not exist. They have been wiped out. We have raped the land for minerals. We have destroyed the forest land. In essence, it's been the devastation of nature's substance base. What is forgotten is that the sustenance from nature can have a price put on it. I mean, really, when you think about it, it's a little funny, but I've thought about this. Do we receive once a month shipments from Jupiter? Is there a spaceship that arrives from Jupiter once a month bringing us our needed natural resources? No, there is nowhere else that we receive our natural resources. Either we conserve them or we lose them. Maldevelopment violates the integrity of an organic, interconnected, diverse, but interdependent ways of life. What is lost is the reality and the viability of symbiosis. Solutions lie in our giving up of our perverse insistence that others live the kind of lifestyles that we do. A horror of universalism pervades our thinking. Although this is a problem in that many cultures are envious of American abundance and culture. American commercialism is a monster that threatens the entire world. Traditional economies are often much more effective than the development solution that is forced upon them. In other words, the inhabitants of the Amazon, for example, were comfortable and they were taken care of through their interdependence with the rainforest. But their poverty has now begun with the destruction of those rainforests. And it's not just begun, it's almost fully complete. Our quote-unquote man-made solutions have had dire consequences. How can we solve these problems? First, we all need to accept responsibility for all the next generation's children of all races living on the planet. There are consequences to our actions. This means that we must look at the deep structures of our beliefs, views, and basic understanding of what human beings are like. like. We might not like what we find, but that is also the challenge, that we must look into our shadow selves. We must examine who our heroes are and rethink who we are holding up to our children as role models. We need to ask ourselves, are we really evolving? Furthermore, it is essential to cooperate with other cultures rather than trying to improve them. Let us question our entertainment culture that forces a steady diet of junk food down the throat of our spirits, making us spiritually devoid of substance. We choose to lose ourselves in distraction rather than developing our sense of our humanity. Jane Fonda talks about feeling the burn. In other words, no pain, no gain, or no guts, no glory. This is not to glorify pain, but it is a statement of scientific fact. In other words, that to grow, develop, and move ahead, something must be sacrificed. Like a rocket must sacrifice its fuel to launch itself out of the gravity of Earth, or the jogger or dieter must endure certain hardships to lose weight. Although even in this, the horizontal, holistic, left brain, traditional thinking of women may be of great help in learning how to grow with less pain. Getting back to the concept of nature equals female, we must learn to love the thing we fear, which can be applied as well to our shadow selves, the unknown aspects of our personalities. And UFOs, extraterrestrials, are part of our shadow selves, the parts of our reality that we do not want to know about, the parts of our reality that we put behind ourselves and say, oh, we don't see that. No, that doesn't exist. That's not real. We need to accept the fact that the human body is not a machine and neither is nature. We are sensitive, holistic beings, and I posit that so is the universe, a sentient, interconnected whole. It is not a time for name calling, but for reconciliation and reconsideration of our behavior. We need responsive leadership, which is the art of wielding power in ways that foster freedom. When was the last time that we had a real president? No one really wants to run for president anymore because you have to sell your soul just to get into a position where you can run for president. The solution is not at all simple. We can see that. Hierarchies are definitely necessary in certain situations. If everyone has to make every decision, participation becomes tyranny. No one is free to act independently, and everyone is enslaved to endless meetings. Another problem that I see is the institution of marriage. The very fact that marriage is, for humans, the norm, when throughout the world, as we know, men are naturally disposed against the institution. It represents a remarkable triumph for female power and control over the naturally promiscuous biology of the male. In starkly sexual and evolutionary terms, there is nothing in marriage for men. Given their rooster desire for novelty and the widest possible distribution of their seed. This is a simple biological fact. One must seriously consider the ramifications of the biological trigger of DNA working in the male for the survival of the species. If we are to face our animal selves honestly, we must face these tough questions. course. Yet I would posit that a great deal of the reason that men marry is because of social pressure, the desire to quote-unquote own a woman, and hence keep her from other men, and to have the security of a home life. If men have been victims, it is of only one thing: the mediocrity of insight into the genius of our masculine biology. There are profound emotional, spiritual, and intellectual differences between men and women, and we must understand these differences before we can put the culturally determined differences into proper perspective. We men have too easily accepted shame and guilt about our sexuality. We have too quickly subjugated our sexual genius as a way of placating women's anxiety about their own ill-defined sexuality. Both sexes are losers in this deal. The solutions lie in not only coming to terms with the wounded earth and our wounded relationships with women, but as men, we need to get over our fear of being close to other men, sharing feelings and experiences, having intimate friends, and most important of all, learning to be vulnerable when we have faced the fears of what lies within ourselves. This frees up great power to live a richer and fuller life, free of the paranoia of others and other things being the enemy. In this way, I feel the solution to a lot of the other problems posed by thinkers nowadays might begin to fall into place. One last point that generates considerable controversy, yet I feel may be valuable to our reclaiming our interrelationship with the earth, is the use of plant hallucinogens, or psychotropic plants, or entheogens. The ethnobotanist Terence McKenna has done much research in this area, along with the great Claudio Naranjo of the SAT Institute. They suggest something very interesting, that through the ingesting of these substances, one may contact, quote, animality in itself, primitiveness, and the instinctual aspect of our nature, unquote. That animality, spontaneity, primitiveness, and instinctiveness appear to be one of the significances of the ayahuasca, the vine of the soul, animalis, which is supported by the fact that all kinds of animals may appear in the visions. And the great Graham Hancock has recently written a fabulous book about this. But let's go back to Naranjo. Read Claudio Naranjo. He goes on to talk about, quote, an inner guidance and a heightened intuition that is traditionally conceptualized as a connection with an inner teacher or guru, unquote. I, Laurence Galian, personally believe that these psychoactive plants, mushrooms, and cacti can be doorways that open for us the ancient harmonies of the human soul with the earth. And I would add, if carefully and contextually understood. I mentioned that I wrote the libretto to an opera entitled Isis and Osiris. And in the role of the individual who plays Set, in the character of Set, I placed the concept of the machine Archon culture. And I would like to read a portion of what Set actually sings in the opera, so you get an idea of what this machine culture, this robot, artificial intelligence culture is all about. And he's talking about how he has destroyed the body of his brother Osiris, who represents more of the holistic alchemical teacher, the one who has come to teach humanity about the mysteries, the great mysteries of the world. So Set says, I lead the revolution to a new future. Each man and woman is an individual, I lead us to a tomorrow of individualism. Isis and Osiris have everyone existing in a communion of consciousness. I intend to change the way humanity sees things. Logic is the new way, not clairvoyance, not the second sight. Logic is all. No longer united with the spirit of nature, I will teach the concept of abstraction, where people's words and concepts have only a theoretical meaning, where people stand far away from reality. Scholars will be very learned and take everything with extraordinary gravity and significance. I set the true heir, will assume the throne. I will rule Egypt as king. This ends our transmission. For tonight we will be in contact soon.